download the TuneIn app from the Google Play, Apple, iOS store. Listen to us on the go. Coming up this afternoon, several Ghanaian haulage trucks carting onions from Niger stranded in Benin in what is believed to be enforcement of economic blockade on Niger's military junta. We get details for you. Meanwhile, Niger has cut off ties with France, US, and Nigeria as peace talks over the coup ends in deadlock. And much later in the package, Parliament sets up committee to probe National Cathedral project. Stay with us for details for the next 15 minutes. A pleasure that you could be a part of this afternoon's bulletin. Let's get into the details. And several haulage trucks from Ghana carting onions from Niger are stranded in Benin since Sunday. They claim the Benin authorities have not given them any reason for the blockade, leading to their onions rotting. It is believed the border closure is part of the enforcement of the economic blockade on Niger as ECOWAS begins to implement sanctions against the military junta there. Ironically, the drivers say other goods such as tomatoes, bananas, yams, and cattle are allowed across the border, while the onion trucks coming from Niger are not allowed. Meanwhile, though, the military junta in Niger, they've cut off ties with Nigeria after the efforts of ECOWAS to resolve the ongoing impasse failed. ECOWAS had issued a 7-day ultimatum for the reinstatement of President Mohamed Bazoum to avoid possible clash with the junta. Nigeria's president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, sent a high-powered delegation to Niger to meet with the coup leaders on Thursday. And the delegation, led by General Abdul Salami Abubakar, retired, only met with reps of the junta. Subsequently, Niger has severed ties with Nigeria, Togo, France, and the United States in what continuously is a worrying situation. The security analyst Adib Sani has joined us on the telephone lines for a bit more on the development there. Mr. Sani, many thanks once again for speaking to us. And to the deadline issued by ECOWAS for the military junta to reinstate the deposed President Bazoum is fast approaching. The junta has announced it is cutting off ties with France, Nigeria, USA, and Togo. It does appear that the situation is getting worse and worse.
Well, absolutely. And I must say, it is worrying. Any attempt by ECOWAS to intervene militarily would pose a serious security threat to the wider West African sub-region that is already reeling from the effects of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Despite the fact that Ukraine is far from Africa was hard hit by the war. So you can imagine if it happens next door. And this is further compounded by the Burkinabes and the Malians saying that any act of aggression against Niger would be tantamount to a declaration of war against them. And let's not forget that Niger is a big country. Ghana has a landmass area of about 238 square kilometers, while Nigeria has about 930,000 square kilometers. Ghana 238,000, Nigeria 930,000. Niger has a landmass area of about 1.27 million square kilometers. So it's a huge country. And that would complicate any attempt to intervene militarily. Okay, already we are dealing with Jenin, Al-Qaeda and ISIS-affiliated groups. Nigeria is dealing with Boko Haram, which it has not been able to defeat. So if we are starting a new front altogether, trust me, it's going to be catastrophic.
Catastrophic, as you say, but what we got, which was intel leaked memo within the Nigerian military some days ago, was that already the army is being moved to enforce a no-fly zone with the coup leaders cutting ties, how do we begin to resolve the situation?
Well, I mean, it beats my imagination. You say no-fly zone. Yes, we have French and other European aircraft going into the country to evacuate their citizens. So, the no-fly zone, I don't know whether it's specific to certain flights. Okay. The thing is getting complicated by the day. And I think it's Tinubu who is behind all of these warmongering. I think that in the midst of all the provocations, the cutting of ties, the closure of borders, the sanctions. By the way, sanctions don't affect the coupists. It affects innocent people. We need to still look at it from the diplomatic angle. We need to put more pressure on them to address it. And by the way, it is also important to understand that it is not only soldiers that engage in coup. Civilians also sometimes engage in coup, and it's called constitutional coups. Okay, so when you look at the African Charter, to be specific, Article 23 is specific about prolonging your stay in office. It's also a coup. Manipulating the constitution to prolong your stay is a coup. Engaging in electoral malpractices such as rigging is a coup. Engaging in other electoral malpractices like gerrymandering is a coup. So ECOWAS should look at this issue holistically. What is currently happening in Senegal is disturbing. The disbanding of the opposition and the arrest of Ousmane Sonko, I think it's a coup. What happened with the case of Alassane Ouattara extending his stay is a coup. What happened with the case of Alpha Conde in Guinea that resulted in many lives lost is a coup. Adam Barrow's insatiable desire for more power and wanted to extend his stay could amount to a coup.
And these are all possible security crisis situation, really, particularly in the Senegal situation, waiting to happen because the unrest has been ongoing for days.
Absolutely. And ECOWAS doesn't seem to care. I mean, theirs is just constricted to military taking over power. And that is what I find really, confusing and ironic. Okay, so our focus should be preventing the military from taking advantage of, the disenchantment and the pain of the people to its advantage. Because a lot of these coups happen before the real coup.
Right.
And we don't seem to be doing anything about it. And let me use this opportunity to appeal to President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. You see, contributing soldiers would amount to fighting somebody's war. And it would be dangerous for us. It would compromise the security of the state because it would be tantamount to declaring war against our neighbor, Burkina Faso. So we need to be very careful.
Mr. Sani, we'll leave the conversation here. I'm sure as and when it continues to develop, we'll come to you for a bit more. That's security analyst Adib Sani speaking to us this afternoon. We'll continue to keep a close eye on the development in Niger, in Senegal, and the entire West African sub-region because it does have implications for us here in Ghana, and we're not an island. But we're moving away from this, returning to the country and the capital and taking you to Parliament, which went on recess yesterday, and the House has set up a committee to investigate the National Cathedral project. It follows a private member's motion by the North Tongue MP Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa together with 5 other minority members demanding scrutiny of the projects. Mr. Ablakwa has been making series of corruption allegations with regard to the stalled project. Last year, a bipartisan committee of Parliament probed aspects of the cathedral project following a Sanja motion against the finance minister. Here is the speaker, Alban Bagbin, adopting the specific motion.
So please, I've just seen the list of the nominees from the minority caucus, but there's nothing from the majority caucus. I think time is of essence. As we leave here, please kindly consult and get the other names so that we can compose the team. This matter was discussed at the lobby the pre-sitting meeting, and it was the understanding agreement of both sides of the House that the motion will be moved. And so once it was moved and the decision was taken, the committee had to be constituted to do the work. That one, I'm very clear about it. So with this, we move on.
Speaker of Parliament, there. Let's just pick quick thoughts from anti-graft campaigner Vitus Azim as to the probe by Parliament over the National Cathedral project. Mr. Azim, many thanks for joining us. And so, just quickly, I presume this will be a step in the right direction, considering what has been revelations upon revelations of quite very worrying details over this ongoing project.
If I can recollect well, it looks like somebody has already petitioned the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. And they are investigating. So I am wondering why the duplication of effort. Apart from the fact that I normally have a problem with bipartisan committees of Parliament constituting themselves into investigative committees and doing these things. But for one thing, the partisanship is always there. Why can't Parliament for once pick people outside the House to do this investigation? We saw what happened with the Minister of Finance case. See, all other investigations by partisan have never come out and yielded anything special. So I don't know why they continue to do that. And to add, I'm sure when they sit there, are usually they take allowances, an additional cost. I don't know. It doesn't yield any results, and we just continue to do these things.
So you would rather, if Parliament is or were interested in any case, if they form a committee like was seen in the investigations into that leaked audio where they are inviting a technical person, they leave the work to technical people and not members of Parliament?
Yes. They claim, they have a lot of work to do. So why are they always taking these things onto themselves? Besides, they have interest. There's always conflict of interest because it's bipartisan. And any allegation in this country is always partisan. So I don't know. I don't think that we just keep doing these things and not really getting what we want.
Right then, Ms. Azim, I appreciate that you could speak to us.
You're welcome.
That's Vitus Azim, an anti-graft campaigner, speaking to us this afternoon. And it's a holiday edition. Let's just end with Labour, because they say they've accepted a new deal from the Finance Ministry over the use of pension funds as part of the domestic debt exchange program. It has, however, asked individual boards of the unions to assess the new offer before signing on to it. Secretary General of the TUC and spokesperson for Organised Labour, Dr. Yauba, he addressed the media after a long-drawn meeting yesterday.
The new offer ensures that there is no loss in the patrimonial value. It is tradable, and also the liquidity will be there. Because you see, the first payment is due on the 22nd of August. And if you don't participate quickly, you may lose that. So all this informed them. So they advised us that they think that it is time for us to work together and for them to use their expertise to assess the new and to participate. But that decision remains with the board. It is not TUC or Organised Labour which take that decision. Organised Labour does not object to the individual corporate trustees.
That's Dr. Yauba, the Secretary General of the Trades Union Congress. And today's Founders Day, the President, he's been speaking ahead of today. Let's just hear exactly what President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo has been saying on a day that remembers all of the founding fathers who worked towards independence for the country.
We should continue to celebrate this day accordingly. Today, 76 years later, and 66 years after independence, our nation is considered a beacon of democracy and stability in Africa, where the rule of law, respect for individual liberties and human rights, and the principles of democratic accountability are part and parcel of our governance structure. These are the very things for which our forebears fought. The battle our generation must fight and win is that of rapid economic development. We must set Ghana to rights and get our country to where it should be. The challenge before us remains to build a modern economy and thereby generate a prosperous, progressive, and dignified life for the mass of our people.
President Akufo-Addo there ending the holiday edition, the Founders Day edition of the Bulletin here on 3FM 92.7. As always, a lot more news if you log on to 3news.com. I am Eric Mawuena Egbeta. Black Rasta is back on the radio.